Hey there, my name is Megan Clark for those that may not know me. And I am so excited because tonight I am going to introduce myself and share my story. If you see me looking down, it's because I came up with this little trusty timeline, which honestly, hands down, if you haven't done something like that, on your Cincy journey, if you have not jot down your timeline from, kind of sort of like when you joined, and then not everything, but just, here and there, maybe accomplishments or just a scale of, what's happened from the time you joined into the present day, I highly recommend it. Just looking at it, like I kind of sort of knew, of course, when I joined and when I promoted some parts and but not really like the in between. So, but to introduce myself again, my name is Megan Clark, and to share a little bit about who I am and what I love. Let's see, I love my fur babies. I have a dog named Loki, and the oldest is Bella. She is our oldest. She is a cat, and she is a mixed, and I always want to say a calico, but I know I'm wrong about that. Or I'm sorry, she is a calico. I always say a tortie. I don't know why, but she's a calico mix, and she's our oldest, and I believe she is around 12 years old. And then the middle child, the middle fur baby, is Loki, and he is half and half as well. I guess we kind of like that around here. Let's see, he is half Great Pyrenees, and fun fact, I always pronounce that wrong. I don't know why I always want to say like great, but now I know it's Great Pyrenees and half German Shepherd. And then our youngest is Kirby, and she definitely keeps us on our toes. Bello, I feel like mellows us out most of the time, unless she's hungry or wants to go outside and hang the laundry with me. Or yeah, or and then there's Kirby. Kirby keeps us on our toes. Kirby, I believe, is closer to 2, and she is sassy. And we actually pretty much rescued all 3 of them. So I love my fur babies, and I love gnomes. And if you can already tell, I love anything that's colorful, anything that's rainbow, sparkles, glitter, confetti. You name it. I always like to say that confetti and glitter run through my veins. Pretty much even just looking honestly everywhere in front of me right now, I have about 3 or 4 different types of confetti and filler. And I know that if my team watches this, then they're not going to be surprised, nor my customers. If you didn't notice my earrings, I love me some spooky season. I love Halloween. I love Halloween decor. A little another fun fact about me is that for several years while I was in college, I helped not only put together a haunted house with some friends for a little while, but I've also worked as, I guess you could say, a character in a haunted house, which was really awesome. Um, and then I absolutely love, if I could go back, I totally would. For several years, I went to Halloween Horror Nights. And if you haven't gone to Orlando during that time, I highly recommend it. In fact, I actually just saw online recently I guess you could say, like the way that they introduce the characters to kick off Halloween Horror Nights, which is so cool. And I guess I forgot that they run it for quite a long time. I don't know why I always thought it was like September to October, but I don't know, maybe they started earlier recently. But I highly recommend it all the same. So let's see what else. I love breakfast. I'm a breakfast fiend. Those that are closer to me know how passionate I would say I am about breakfast. I guarantee you that I can always find a brunch spot near me. I'm always determined to do so. So passionate about breakfast that I feel like I'm unbalanced in my day if I don't have some form of breakfast. And it doesn't have to be grand. We're literally talking like even a protein bar and coffee, something as simple as that. And then mentally, I'm good to go. Let's see what else. I love being sarcastic. I love being silly. I was raised on prank jokes. I love pranking my husband. That's something new that we're kind of getting into. More so than him, but that's okay. Let's see what else. Oh, I love let's see, I love watching. I really get into like series, TV series, so I'm very careful about what shows I watch because I will do a deep dive into the characters and it kind of becomes, I wouldn't say necessarily like an obsession, but I definitely do get really closely, I guess, connected with the characters in a way where I almost have a hard time differentiating between like the fact that these characters are not real. So if you were to tell me that, I probably would deny it. Some favorite shows of mine in the past include Friends, Grey's Anatomy, New Girl. What else? Dawson's Creek. We want to go way back. Dawson's Creek. Let's see what else before that. I grew up on a lot of times during the summer times. I would go up to my grandparents' house. So there were a couple of shows that we watched that were on their television. That was a part of, I think, like the TV Land series. So I Dream of Jeannie, Petticoat Junction. Those two were really cool. Definitely not in my era of growing up, but I definitely did watch those. So those were really cool too. Gilligan's Island is included in that as well. Let's see what else. I love all things Pixar, Disney related. I'm definitely one of those that's like a big kid at heart. Hence, I have like my little evil queen Yeti. Even behind me, all of my favorite products behind me are a lot of our animated stuff. I love Scentsy Buddies. Um, but yeah, so let's go ahead and get started on enough about my likes because honestly, I could probably go on and on with that. But so I started, I actually joined in October 2019. And one thing that's actually pretty interesting for me is that I didn't even know what Scentsy was when I joined. So let's go a little bit before I joined. So my original sponsor was a good friend of mine, still is a good friend of mine, and her and I were in a bunco group together. And I ended up one night I was hosting bunco, and I remember her saying she kept it super simple, to the point. Which looking back on it, I definitely admire because there wasn't a lot of like fluff, word vomit. She kept it super simple, and she's like, "Hey, I got a bottle of wine. I have this business that I just started. I have a bottle of wine. I'll bring some, smell. I think she said smell goods. I'll bring some things that smell good. I know all y'all love candles, so any of these products smell good. And I have wine. And honestly, she had me a wine. I say that to this day. To be honest, most everything that else she said beyond or past wine was like right over my head. So at that point, I was like, count me in because if you're bringing a bottle and you're supplying whatever it is that you're selling, and all I have to do is host in my house, sign me up. I had no clue what I was doing. At the time, I worked for a clothing company, and although I was technically the assistant manager, I had the position. Basically was working and filling in for the position for manager, but I had no management experience. I had assistant management experience. So if you've been in retail, you know the difference between the two. And I pretty much took on that management role for close to a year. And before that, I worked for the same clothing brand company, I think close to about 6 years, I believe, probably 6.5, 7 years. And yeah, and so I got a lot of customer service experience from that, a lot of management experience. But by the time that I transferred from one store to another, that is around the time that I was taking on that management role. So it was two jobs into one. I at the time, let's see, let me backtrack. So at the time, I was out of college, and I think we had just yes, we had just gotten I was out of college for a couple years, and I had just gotten married to my now husband. So we've been going on five years now. But whenever right before I joined, we were newly married. So at that time, I guess we were married for a year then. And we had just got our house. We were just settling into our where we're at now, our first house. And I was still working full time. So I was working full time for this clothing company, pretty much married to my job. For those of y'all that work retail, retail life, especially during the holidays, because keep in mind it's October. But prior to that year, it was just super busy. My job pretty much ran my life. And I remember there were many times where I was coming home late and I pretty much was not even aware of like sun up, sun down. And I let my job run my life. I let it run my personal life, my mental self, my mental state, my physical self, everything. And to the point to where I was just miserable. And to be honest and transparent, the only reason why I was still with the said company is because I was really close to my team, those that worked with me, and I didn't want to leave them hanging. So I told myself at that point that I was like, okay, I knew at the time that they were going to bring somebody else in. So I wanted to make sure that that person, that new manager, was going to get nice and comfortable. And once they got a little bit more comfortable, then at that point, I knew that it was going to be it for me. So, ironically, this was probably the decision that I made to, at that point, to walk away from my job, my full time job. Um, Not to go into Cincy, but just to stop, period, was closer to October. And so, whenever I had my friend, whenever we were playing Bunko, and she's like, let's let's have a get together at your house. I'll bring the wine. I was surprised, honestly, that nobody else took her up on this offer. But yeah, I said, "Sign me up." And so probably within, like, I guess a week or 2, it seemed like after that, she came over to the house, and she had already set up a shopping link for me. And I remember that the shopping link alone was super successful. I had, I think 3 people that including my mother-in-law, I had 3 or 4 people show up, I remember, to my house, and I didn't really know what to expect. It was a lot of fun. My then sponsor, she I guess we'll just say the consultant because she wasn't my sponsor at the time. So my friend, brought her testers, and I remember she brought a couple of catalogs and some order forms, and she had one warmer that she set up, which ended up being my very first warmer that my mother-in-law actually purchased for me, which was really cool. And yeah, I think that was it. I think that was all that she set up. She didn't really have much else, and so that was it. And I remember we had a lot of fun. Even though there was a couple people there, my party ended up being super successful. And I remember the next day, my friend sent me a shopping link and she's like, hey, this is how many rewards you have. Take a look around and let me know. Let me know what you think. And just let me know, whatever you want to order. And looking back on it, I'm very shocked looking back on it. There's a part of me that is shocked that she didn't ask me to join, especially considering how successful my party was. But I also have to take into consideration the fact that what I do know now and I didn't know then was that she was just as new as I was. So, to be fair to her in her defense, I don't think that she perhaps knew that she could possibly either ask me to join or it could be the other way. The other thing is, I feel like that she may not have wanted a team. So that could have gone either way. Um, but all the same, she didn't say anything to me. And so she sent me this link. And keep in mind that, I'm working this full time job. As much as I enjoyed working with those that were on the team with me, that were at the store with me, other than that, I was just spent. I was burnt out. I was done. It was a sad, sad, sad situation. But the thing is that, I knew at the end of the day that I didn't want to be anywhere where I wasn't feeling appreciated, where I was not getting compensated for how hard I was working. Nobody was cheering me on. I was on my own. Um, I was at a job where there was high demand all the time, and I feel like that the morale, it was almost like it was always up to me to keep it going. And it's really difficult whenever you feel like the weight is on your shoulders and you feel like that you're under so much pressure and you're trying to look. And I was very thankful because I will say that I did have 2 people that were in the same line of work as I was, that were, I would say, definitely my mentors for quite a long time. And so it was really honestly a blessing to be able to lean on them and in that during that year, because I just felt like I was drowning all the time. And I knew I didn't know what was gonna be next for me, but I did know that that was not what I wanted anymore because I was just beyond miserable. And especially considering the fact that I was new homeowner and I was newly married, I was miserable coming home to my husband, and I knew I wasn't feeling completely myself. And a lot of times I found that I was not making the greatest choices as far as just getting through the day. I was coming home and I was honestly drinking just to waste the day away, just to forget everything. And then I would just wake up, go to work, and then do it all over again. And it was just this constant cycle and it was never ending. And so whenever my then sponsor, I remember she sent me the shopping link to look around, and coincidentally, I think it was around Thursday. And I say that because I had just gotten paid. And I remember looking around at the website and I just so happened to come across the little button that says join. And if you're familiar with the Cincy site, there used to be a video. I don't know if it's still there or not, but there used to be a video, and it talked about like why you should join, like what Cincy is, why you should join. And so that's what I watched. I thought it was super cool. It was paused, of course, but all I saw was like bright colors and confetti, and I'm like, I don't know what this is, but okay, whatever. I have some time to kill, so I hit play and watched it, and I was hooked. I was hooked. I remember seeing the video, and even though I didn't quite understand what I was watching, I knew I felt like in my heart what I saw was just pure joy, happiness. These people in this video were having a really good time. They looked like they were connected, close friends. They knew each other somehow, even though I didn't know what they were doing or where they were at. All I could tell was that they were having a good time, and I knew that they just looked happy. They just looked content. They looked happy. They looked like they were exactly where they needed to be. And that full package is what sold me because I didn't even have a clue what Scentsy was. I think I said that earlier. Like, I had no idea what Scentsy was. Even though I had a Scentsy party, I'd never heard the word Scentsy. I had no idea what the Scentsy company was. I didn't know what they sold. I didn't know anything about the products. I was a candle fiend. I was one of those. I was definitely a Bath and Body Works girl, fanatic to say the least. And back then I loved me some candles. But I will say that whenever my friend came over to the house and we had the party, the two scents that instantly hooked me was Winterberry apple tea and cider mill. Those were my two favorites, and instantly hooked me because, of course, around the time right before I joined, when I had my party, it was like the beginning of October. And so all the fall and winter scents were already out. And so that already, October is one of my favorite months through the year. So added on top of that, when we're smelling all of the fall and winter fragrances, was just an added bonus for me. And it was just a fun experience. And so I remember I went ahead and decided to click join, even though I had no idea what that meant. I saw that there was a kit for $99, and I had just gotten paid, and I was like, you know what? Why not? Now, I will say that for those that do know me fairly well before Cincy, I definitely am an impulse person. I have my moments because there are things that, as I've gotten older, I will say over the last couple of years, I have definitely mellowed out a little bit in that department. As far as I'm a little bit more of a deep thinker, I take my time on things now. Versus prior to that, it was more like, ooh, squirrel moment. This looks like fun. Let's do this. And so for $99, your girl signed up. And I remember my friend the next day messaged me and she's like, "Did you join?" And I said, "Well, I clicked join. I don't know what that means, but I clicked join." And she goes, "Oh, cool." And looking back on it, like I said, she and I were I have no idea when she joined, but I do know that it was very close to around the time that I joined. So we were around the ballpark, around the same timeline as consultants with one another. And so that was October 2019. Um, I looking back on it, I did certify, and I did promote and certify literally in October. So I joined October 16th, 2019, and by the end of the month, I'd already certified. I knew at that time that Scentsy, even though I didn't know what the brand was or anything in conjunction with it, I knew that I was in the right place because I knew that I had an audience that liked the product. There was a demand for the product. And because of how successful my party was, I knew that I had a firm foundation for me to build off of. At the time, it was not at all anything that I considered doing full time. That did not that was not even in my registry. I knew that this was something that I could possibly get creative with. That is something that I'm very passionate about, is getting creative, having finding that brand. I get a lot of that from my retail background as far as branding, as far as sales is concerned, and I like a good challenge. And I remember in the beginning, whenever I did join, like I was saying earlier, I was already walking away from my then full time job. And for a little while, I would say, I guess right after that, actually, soon after that, I ended up working for, at the time, a friend of mine who had a boutique business. And I worked alongside her for, I would say, about a little less than a year. That was interesting because that was, let's see, that was getting closer to 2020. But I would say right after, yeah, so like November going into 2020, no, I'm sorry, November 2019 going into 2020, for at least about a half a year or so, I worked at a boutique. And so that was a lot of fun. And again, I pulled my retail experience into that. But 2019, one thing I thought was pretty interesting is literally, a month later after joining, I got my first team member. And I thought that that was kind of ironic because here I am. And I was like, okay, karma is kicking me in the butt because here I was, I joined, not knowing what Scentsy was, not even knowing what joining honestly even meant, and was just like, a cool, this looks like fun. Let's try this out. And, of course, my sponsor at the time was like, what just happened? What did you do? And here I was a month later, and I have my first team member. And same thing. I had no idea what that was. I didn't know what that meant. But my friend and I ended up knowing beforehand through retail, through this same retail job. We worked in two different states, and she just so happened to follow me on Instagram. And at that time, I was definitely a flyer fanatic. We've all been there, right? And I did, I guess I posted this specific flyer that did have the host kit included in it, and it was the 99 host kit. And I remember she DM'd me and she's like, how do I get my hands on these smell goods? And pretty similar to what I did to my friend, I was at work and I was on my break when she messaged me, and I'm pretty sure I said something along the lines of, "Hey, it's good to hear from you. I'll get back with you when I get home or later tonight." I'm sure it was something like that because I had no idea what to do. I had no idea what to say. And just the fact that she was asking about this, I was like, oh my gosh, like red flags, panic mode, big time. And I do remember I reached out to my sponsor, and then I guess it would have been our superstar consultant at the time. So I reached out to both of them, and then I was like, what the heck? Like, what the heck do I do? What do I say? What's happening? And so, yeah, I ended up a month later getting my first ever team member and not knowing what we were doing. I had no idea. And so, looking back on it, I do wish that I could have been a little bit more transparent with her, but I was too prideful and I didn't want to admit to her that I didn't know what I was talking about or what I was doing. Um, I don't think I would necessarily change anything else just because her and I are still good friends to this day. And she is back on my team. She recently rejoined and reinstated this month, which is so awesome. But I don't think I would have changed that part other than just letting her know I don't know what I'm doing. But I think that's easier said than done, right? So, yeah, so that was November 2019. Then fast forward to January 2020, just a shy of a few months later, and I went straight from certified, and then I promoted to lead. Now, we'll say one really nice thing about my personal timeline is that I never skipped a title. I don't think that was really something that I kept in mind. It's not really something I thought about, but I did know because of my retail background and even prior like sale experience prior to retail, I knew that I knew about goals. I knew because of the happy mail that I was receiving from my upline at the time that they were letting me know, hey, this is your title. This is how much, you want to goal yourself for PRV per month. This is what it's going to take for you to promote to the next level. And like I said before, your girl likes a good challenge. And most importantly, when someone tells me tells me that I can't do something, oh, you bet your bottom dollar that I'm gonna go 110%. Like I'm gonna go beyond expectations because don't you dare tell me no. Anytime that someone in my past, from the time I was younger till now, has told me, if there's something that you're not capable of doing, or you might as well settle. No, that's not in me. And so I've always liked a good challenge. And so whenever I first started, I do remember I don't think I really like shouted it from the rooftops, but I do remember posting it on Facebook saying, "Hey, I did a thing. I joined Cincy. Let me know if you need anything." But I do remember there were a couple of close friends and family members that were a little bit of a naysayer. And I will be honest when it comes to multi level marketing, networking companies. I had friends that were in the industry for quite a while before I was, and I didn't really know what to make of what they were doing. I knew that some of them were in these businesses full time, and then the others actually had full-time jobs outside of that from working from home. But I never really, I guess, grasped the thought that you could do something like this full time. And I, full transparency, didn't really have a lot of respect for some of my friends. Like, I thought it was like, oh, kind of like how some people are to me now, where it's like, oh, that little business, oh, that hobby, that's cool. That looks like fun what you're doing. That, the little thing, the little side gig. Oh, that's cute. That's cool that you do that. That was kind of my mentality for quite a while, was like, oh, that's cool. That's fun. But it never was like a wow, they work really hard. They worked really hard to get what they are. Wow, they work full time in this business that they have. Oh, they're a business owner. They have their own small business. I definitely did not, unfortunately, have that mindset back then, but it was because I feel like that was just due to ignorance. I didn't do my homework. I in my defense, I had no idea what any of that really stood for or what it was about, but I do now. But yeah, so back then, let's see. So January 2020, I had promoted to lead, and during the first year that I was a consultant, it was definitely extremely rough. I was having fun doing the business. I was having fun selling Cincy, and for the first 2 years of my business, I did nonstop online parties. During the midst of me working, I went from working at a boutique store straight into substitute teaching. And during this process of just trying to figure out like what else it is that I want to do, I had no idea at the time. I hadn't even taken into consideration the fact that I'm like, oh, I could sell Cincy full time. Oh, I could be a Cincy consultant and own my own business and then do this from my house and then let this be the only thing, that I'm doing. Didn't even really register with me at the time. I was still having fun, but on the home front, my husband and I, we for several years from the time that into the time that I had joined and become a consultant, we were trying to get pregnant. And it's one of those things where you just don't do your homework. And I didn't know the facts about birth control and how long it's going to take to get pregnant after birth control, and you have to get off of birth control for x amount of time, and just all of the very, very exhausting things that come from infertility and trying to get pregnant. And I remember at the time with my Scentsy business that it was my saving grace. I, at the time, was feeling defeated, and I struggled with depression. So, as you can imagine, when you're not able to do what you feel like your body is supposed to do, what's expected of you, you feel like a failure. You feel like a failure, you feel like you're failing everyone else around you. You don't know what's wrong with your body, you can't understand what's happening, and you have all these things that's happening up here mentally, and at the same time you're running a business. And, at the time, I believe during that first year that I joined Cincy, I had 4 people on my front line. And I had 4 people that were looking up to me, right? That were looking to me for advice on growing their business and how to sponsor and how to get sales. And, when you're here, I am constantly struggling. I'm struggling with depression. I'm struggling to get out of bed every day. I'm struggling to, figure out at that time, when you're wanting to have a baby, it seems like it is the only thing you can think about. And y'all, I was like eat, breathing, and sleeping getting pregnant. I was doing all the things, and it didn't matter what I did, it was still not happening. It still wasn't happening. And I'll never forget that during that time, even though that I was possibly in one of the darkest moments mentally for myself, um, I still dragged my butt on lives, and I was still going live with my team. And at the time, I wasn't authentically being myself. I felt like I had to get on. Whew, I felt like I had to get on live, and I felt like I had to put up a front. I feel like I had to be, you know, so happy and excited because you hear it in your tone, right? Like if you're not excited about something, I can hear it in my tone. I can hear it in your tone if you're not excited about something. So I feel like that whenever I went live with my team and looking back on it, thank God it wasn't Zoom, it was Facebook Live. But I still was like, hey, how are y'all? Happy Saturday, happy Friday. And it was just so fake because I felt like that honestly, it was more exhausting for me to go live and portray that I was something that I was not. And I was on the struggle bus. I was on the struggle bus. I had a VIP group from the very get-go. From the very first day that I clicked join, I don't know what the heck made I don't know. I mean, my friends had boutique businesses online. Maybe that's what kind of like ignited that part of my brain where it was like, you need a VIP group. But I don't, looking back when I don't think I remember anyone physically telling me or just outright saying you need a VIP group. But I started it. So here I was in the midst of not getting what I thought I wanted at the time, feeling miserable, not happy about myself, not happy with my body, feeling like a failure, struggling with depression. And I still have people counting on me, right? I still have people counting on me. And I felt like I couldn't be honest with them at the time because if I did, they're going to be like, "Ooh, she's got too much going on. I don't want to bother her with any of this because she's got a lot on her plate." I did not want that to happen. I didn't want to feel that was the last place I wanted to fail was in my business because it was the one thing that I could count on, and it was a constant for me because I determined how my business was run. I determined if I was going to open my business every single day, and that was the only thing that I could control at that time. So, in the midst of not being able to conceive, struggling with fertility, meanwhile, my husband is struggling with sobriety. And y'all, when I tell you, when you are so focused on something and you're determined to make it happen, I was blindsided with everything else. I feel like that I had almost like rose-colored glasses on because I wasn't even aware of what was going on in my house because I was just so caught up in getting pregnant that I forgot to like bring him along with me. So we lived pretty much two separate lives for several years. And, you know, again, Where I'm at right now in this office wasn't always like this. My office was first in the kitchen. I remember working in the kitchen. I remember working in the living room. Still to this day, sometimes I will pick up some of the stuff and move into there. But after a while in our house, was like, you know what, I need to make this space for my office. So slowly but surely, I started moving things into this room. And this was my saving grace. This room, these four walls, I can surely say saved my life. These four walls brought me joy, brought me happiness. I was able to show it for myself when I feel like nobody else was. And I didn't understand what was happening with my husband at the time. I realized after a while that I couldn't help him. He had to help himself. And in the midst of that, I knew that I had to help myself. And by helping myself, it was me throwing myself into my business. So that's what I did. I threw myself into my business. So, April 2020, as we all know, 2020 was a very interesting year. I went from being a substitute teacher to being offered a full time job as a preschool teacher. And so that was around 2020. And so I want to make sure I got that right. Let's see. Or was it actually that was 2021? Sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. So April 20, that's what it was. So April around right before let me see, January. Sorry, y'all, let me backtrack. So January 2020 was when I promoted to lead. And I do remember January of 2020, I immediately went to World Tour. And I didn't know what World Tour was at the time, but I'm so glad I went. I remember my now superstar director, Amanda Aiden, talked about how incredible World Tour was. And even though I never heard of that before, it was right down the road from me in Houston, Texas. It I was like, sign me up. I don't know what this is, but this was my very first time getting together, meeting anybody else on my upline, on the team, and so I was there for it. And even though at the time I thought it was so cliche when they say that leaders are born at events, but it is true because ever since then, I've attended every single training event that is thrown my direction, that I hear, that I catch word of. And I promise y'all, every time that I've gone to a training or a leadership opportunity or a Cincy event, Cincy training of any kind, no matter where it's at, no matter what it's for, I get a huge key takeaway from that, personal or business related. And something big happens every single time. There's like a fire that just gets lit up under you. So January 2020, like I said, is when I went to my first world tour. Um, and I was a lead at the time. And then April 2020, so a couple months after that, I immediately promoted to star consultant with 5 team members. So at the time, I had not started, or my downline hadn't started growing by that time. I had 5 people that I had personally sponsored. So April 2020. At that time, I was substitute teaching. And so right around the time that 2020 rolled around, I was furloughed from my substitution job, and I had no clue what I was going to do. So at the time, I was at home, and honestly, I was really super stressed to try to find something outside of the house. And I just didn't have it in me. With everything going on personally in my life at that time, I had put on the back burner trying to get pregnant. And I knew that I honestly was just trying to keep my head above water once again. Um, I was lost. I lost myself, and I honestly was just trying to make it on a day-to-day basis. And for those that do struggle, like my personal, actually personally as well, struggle with ADHD. So when you're struggling with depression, ADHD, all of the smallest things are a huge deal. It's a big thing. So brushing your teeth, taking a shower, just not even just self care, but just everyday hygiene, making sure you feed yourself, making sure you do your day to day things that mundane type things are a big deal to somebody like that. And so I was just like once again on the struggle bus and just trying to take it one day at a time. And so that was April. And then shortly a month later, so May 2020, I went from a star consultant to superstar consultant. Um, Definitely, I would say, even though I didn't skip a title, I fast tracked, as you can tell, I fast tracked through promoting. And once I hit superstar consultant, I knew that I really wanted to remain in that pocket for as long as I needed to, because I knew on a business side that I wanted to make sure that not only could I could maintain my numbers personally, but then my team could as well. And then together we could maintain and then hit those goals. And I knew that until we could maintain those goals, that having that mindset of promoting to director, it was not even in my realm. It wasn't even in my thoughts. Not to say that I didn't have it in mind, that I didn't want to promote, but I knew that myself included in my team, we were not ready to promote, because I was so worried that as quickly as I earned it, it would be taken away from me. And so I knew, I was like, okay, I'm going to give myself at least a year, at least minimally a year, and then let's maintain those numbers, right? From the time that I started in 2019 until about 2022, I was averaging my own personal PRV at 2,000 a month. Okay. That was just my personal goal. Everyone's goal is different, but that was my personal goal. And because of that, we were on the fast track and promoted very quickly, even with a small team. Because I believe by the time that I was superstar consultant, we only had about, I think, 13 or 15 people. It was 16. We had 16 people altogether on the team. So it really wasn't even that much at all. But I feel like because I was bringing in an average 2,000 PRV a month, that definitely contributes to that. But the thing is that when you are spinning your wheels and you're almost pretty much running on empty, because that's one thing I learned the hard way over those first couple years, is that you can't really do much from an empty cup. And I was allowing outside. I was real of a. I was I was allowing outliers, and I was allowing things and other people to, I guess you could say, like, take from my cup, and I wasn't getting it filled in the process, and I was just spent. And I remember looking back on it, and I was just so adamant on wanting to do everything for everyone that I wasn't really doing much for myself at the end of the day. And I didn't really know at the time what boundaries were. The magical word, boundaries. So by the next year, so September 2021, I promoted to director. So I thought that was pretty amusing. Like I said, in around 2020 of the following year, when I promoted to superstar consultant, I gave myself a year, and I said, give or take a year. And if we are ready, if and then, I'll set my sights on promoting to director. So super cool, because September is my birthday. So September 2 years ago, I promoted to director. We at the time were a team of 26. And looking back on that, I was like, I was so proud of us as a team promoting to director. It was such an incredible experience. I remember just being on the moon that I did that for myself. And I knew that it was in the cards, but I didn't honestly expect it to happen as soon as it did. But the thing is that when you're tracking your numbers, because I'm a big numbers person, I feel like, again, going back to like my retail background has a lot to do with that. But I'm a big numbers person. So when I'm tracking, if you're tracking your numbers and you're on top of not only your personal numbers, but then your teams as well, you can almost project in advance which direction it's going to go in. Now, obviously, you can't say exactly what's going to happen, but you can, um, like I said, you can propose, you can kind of foresee it happening, or the direction of what could be possible. So because we were maintaining and we were growing from, so much in such a short amount of time, I knew that it was just a matter of time before we promoted to director, and we did. So that was September 2021. Pretty much just the same as when I joined. and I had no clue whatsoever what having a team meant or sponsoring or what Cincy was. I could definitely say the same as being a director. I had no clue what I was doing. And full transparency, over the last couple years of being a consultant, I didn't really, when I joined, I did not at the time have as much access to training and all the tools and all the knowledge and all the fun creative things as we do now, even just in a short amount of couple of years. However, YouTube was my best friend. I didn't expect anybody to hold my hand in the beginning of the business. I immediately knew that I needed to take off basically and hit the ground running in the very beginning of joining, because I knew that because of my ADHD, because I procrastinate, because I love shiny things, that if I didn't take off and hit the ground running with my business, then it probably was never going to happen. Yeah, and so it definitely, it honestly, funny enough, I always say that it feels like it's been longer than 4 years, but in a good way, because there's been so much packed into the last 4 years as far as memories or accomplishments, ups and downs, that that's why I feel like, to me sometimes it just feels like it's a much larger time frame than 4 years, which is like insane, but in a good way, I promise. um, so fast forward. Why do I keep saying that? So fast forward to September 2021. Again, I had a team of 26, and like I was saying earlier, had no idea what I was doing. I knew I feel like I can tell you, word of advice, a little word of advice is, because of the work background that I had. Um, I felt like when I first started growing my team that I needed to run it as well, like a business. And I learned, because I crashed and burned on that. I learned very quick, like, that that was not the mentality to have. That I am not their boss. I am their sponsor, which I basically am the gateway into the bridge of getting them into Cincy. But I know now that I have little control, and I don't want that either. I don't want that. I don't, because when I joined myself, I wanted something for myself where somebody wasn't necessarily going to be hovering over my shoulder, micromanaging me and telling me what to do. And I didn't want anyone necessarily holding my hand. I didn't want someone to, shadow me and make me feel inferior, less than. But I also didn't like people ever. I've never liked anyone ever telling me what to do. Show me the way. Like, if you want to give me a little bit of an outline or a template, but don't tell me what to do, because that gets under my skin. Okay. So I felt like I went into the mentality, because I was so successful in the very beginning with my business at such a very quick pace. I felt like when I sponsored somebody, it was like, this is what worked for me. You can do it too. But I soon quickly realized is that we are all different from one another, and we learn differently, and everyone has different goals, and everyone's reason why is different as well. And that's just something that I learned over time the hard way. And I think it's just a learning and a growth experience, because none of us know, like, right, there's no blueprint to any of this. To life, there's no blueprint. And you just kind of have to learn as you go, and just reflect, back on the decisions that you make, and just learn from it. All right, so October 2021, I did think that this was actually pretty interesting. I thought this was a little another fun fact. I like to say that a lot. So, fun fact about myself: 2021 October was actually the 1 month that I sponsored 5 people. So, I was looking back on kind of like the last couple years of sponsoring. And I believe that that was actually the biggest number of people that I sponsored in 1 month, that were brand new consultants, was October of 21. And I thought that was actually pretty interesting, because I would have thought that it would have been closer to like a promotion special, or, maybe even closer to like when we switched out, catalogs, transition months. But no, so October 2021. One thing I definitely regret is not making notes along the way of perhaps like what I did differently during that month. I think that would have been cool to be able to look back on that. So I will say that during the year when I promoted to director, it was definitely not the easiest. I feel like that I it was definitely a bit of a challenge, and I feel like that wasn't for like lack of the better word, like for trying. I think that it was kind of almost like trial and error. It was finding that balance between doing what's good for my business and working for myself and making sure that I put myself first and not necessarily my team, but at the same time, being there for those that are showing up on my team and that want not necessarily like the help, but to be a mentor to them, to guide them, to help them, especially in the very beginning. But that I feel like that it was a little bit of like a tug of war, just trying to find like the difference between how much is too much and when is it like not enough, if that makes sense. Because for me, I had, my VIP group, and I had my team page. And I feel like that I was like, oh my gosh, like if I'm not showing up every single day, if I'm not giving them and providing them all the things, then we're not going to succeed. Like I'm not being my best self, as a leader if I'm not showing up every single day. And y'all, I was answering every text. Like if a team member texted me, I was on it. And if they private messaged me, I was on it. And at the time, it didn't matter to me at the time what time it was because I was still answering them. I had no, once again, that fun word I love, boundaries. I didn't have boundaries. I didn't have boundaries with my customers and I didn't have boundaries with my team members. And after a while, honestly, it did take a big toll on me. And I've learned a lot along the way. I have learned that you have to meet people where they're at, and you can't make anyone do anything that they're not willing to show up for. And the heartbreak is at the end of the day when you see the potential in someone, but they don't see it in themselves. But the celebration comes when you have instilled in that person that you do believe in them and that there is potential there and they see that through and then they finally get to that point where they see it in themselves, and that, y'all, that makes it all the worth it. I have seen people come and go. I've had team members that were with me in the very beginning who were really good friends of mine who dropped off, and it did take a little bit of a toll on our friendship. Um, I've had family members join. I've had old coworkers join. I've had people who have joined in the very beginning who just did it for themselves and they were their best customers and now they sell it full time or part time. You just never know. I have learned, like I said, a lot. I've learned that this business is like any other business, how there's going to be a lot of ups and downs along the way. You just have to reflect back on the previous fiscal year. You have to look back on the previous month and, just learn from it and grow from it. Learn and grow. I feel like that's honestly what it's hands down all about. And finding the moments in your business that bring you joy. That's something that I feel like that I'm really proud about myself is that I've been able to weed out the things that don't bring me happiness, that don't bring me joy anymore, and I don't do those. I don't do those things anymore. I think it's important when you are a small business owner, or honestly just a business owner in general, that every year you have to grow with the flow. So what I mean by that is that when our world is changing, when social media is changing, when society is changing, all the things, we have to learn to adapt, right? And I feel like a lot of times it is easier to get stuck in our ways and for us to get comfortable. Or if it was like me for the last couple of years, just trying to survive, just trying to survive on a day to day basis. And because of that, I feel like that you get kind of complacent and you kind of numb out um, all the other things that are possibly coming your way that you could learn, that you could try. And because you really just don't have the energy within you, you're just barely making it. And I feel like that are seasons in our life where that's perfectly fine. That, if you're riding it out and you can see the light at the end, I promise you that it's going to get better. Not to say that I still don't have, hard times myself. I mean, um I've had people pass away in the last couple of years, close friends of mine, family members. Um, my husband and I have had our fair, struggles as well. One of the best things I could ever advocate and do and suggest for anybody out there is therapy. Therapy is not just for someone who immediately has something that they need to address. I honestly firmly feel like every single person in this entire world should have a therapist. Um, Whether you feel like you've got something that you need to work through or not. Honestly, hands down, I have a therapist that I see every week, and it is something that I feel like that I permanently now look forward to because it gives me someone that is outside of my everyday mundane life that I can not only connect with, but I can unplug and unload on and process things that maybe perhaps other people can understand. Um, and I feel like that when you're a business owner, and specifically when you have people that are on your team, you're still carrying a lot with you. And if one thing that I've learned for myself personally in the last year is that I identify as an empath. So I feel like that it makes a lot of sense from whenever I first started sponsoring, and I had a team from the very get go, that a lot of the struggles that and heartaches and losses that my team members were going through, I deeply feel on a much grander scale. And that also connects and coincides with the fact that, like, it's important for me to constantly find ways to fill my cup up because I cannot be my best self if I'm not taking care of myself. And I always want to be my best self with not only my customers, but my team members as well. So, a little spiel too, a little shout out to my husband. During the last couple years in my Scentsy business, he has gotten sober. So he is sober living, and he is going on, I believe he is 3 years. And if he watches this, he's going to correct me, but I believe 3 years. I don't know why I want to say four. But yeah, 3 years, I believe. And I am so super, super, super proud of him, especially because he did it during the pandemic time during 2020, and I cannot even imagine the willpower, honestly, for someone to go through something like that. So I'm very, very, very proud of him. And we work pretty much together with my Scentsy business. He does work full time. And he works, if anyone's familiar with the DuPont schedule, he works the DuPont schedule. I recently have learned what that actually means. And he's been there for the last couple of years. And he is a super hard worker. But when he is not working, he does help me with my business. And wherever I can figure out where he can help me, that's something that's not necessarily my strongest point, is being able to talk to somebody, anybody, not even just him, about how I can get help in my business. Because I feel like I know that that's like definitely a patience, right? It's a patience thing. And for me to like take a deep breath and be like, okay, what is something that we can knock off of this list so we can spend more time together? So he is my personal assistant. He's definitely my chauffeur. I call him sometimes my Uber driver. But we love doing deliveries together, and we make it a lot of fun. So going back to my timeline, in October of 2022, I will say, for the last couple months prior to that, I was on the struggle bus, in and out, dipping in and out of Director Q. So, for a full year, I had, during that year, I promoted to director, and then soon after, like I said, in and out, up and down, Director Q, got it back, in and out. One thing I've learned also with that is that I feel like that there's kind of a stigma. um, there's like an excitement that I feel like builds up when you first join and you're excited to promote and you see like the potential in which there is potential to keep growing. But I feel like that what is not talked a lot about is just that mentality of what happens whenever you do promote all the way up and then you lose that title. And I know that that sounds kind of like, she lost her title. And don't get me wrong, at that time, it was devastating. It was sad. But again, I'm a numbers girl. So I actually foresaw this happening before it happened. And I don't really know how to describe that one. But I could definitely tell you that I didn't wake up the next day and was shocked, that I dropped down to superstar consultant. But interesting enough, we actually have come full circle as a team. Even though we've had a lot of ups and downs, a lot of people come and go, people drop off. I almost feel like gosh, I can't even believe I'm saying this because fun fact about me is I don't like snakes. I don't like reptiles. I don't like snakes, but we are, I can't believe I'm using this metaphor. We're almost like de-shedding. Okay. That's what I feel like our team had to do. Is we basically had to de-shed um, all the things that were kind of like built up at the very beginning of Team Faith and Soul that made us back then who we are. And now I feel like the team, including myself as a leader and their sponsor, completely different people for the better, completely different people. And it's so cool because some of the OGs that were with me in the very beginning have reinstated, rejoined, and they too are at very different places in their life, including myself. And I just think that that is so cool because now I can kind of see like the the light at the end of the tunnel, the horizon, because now I feel like that we're in such a good place. So October 22 is, like I said, whenever I dropped back down to superstar consultant. And I will say that, like I said in the very beginning, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It was very devastating in the beginning because who doesn't like to see that director title, right? Um, who doesn't like the perks that come with that, right? Like walking across the stage, and I love me some stickers. So as silly as it sounds, even have those stickers that says like your director loves you, things like that. And it was kind of sad for me for a little while, but you know what? It's okay. It's okay because just like it was whenever I first promoted back then to superstar consultant, I knew at that time, like I said before, that we were not ready, that I was not ready, and that I wanted to get that kind of momentum going, and I wanted to make sure that my months were fully loaded, that I was, um, you know, uh, what do I want to say? Like getting my calendar full for the next month. I wanted to make sure that all of those things were in place, so then that way it was a well-oiled machine. My business could run on itself and I could actually enjoy and do the things that bring me joy without actually having to like hustle every single moment of every single day to get to where I want it to be. And it did that for quite a long time. And funny enough, like I said earlier, we've come full circle. And even though I do have that title of superstar consultant, I feel like that I am in such a better place than I've ever been over the last couple years. Not only as a wife, but for myself personally, as a leader, as a friend, over the last 2 years, I've met some of my people now that I call my best friends. I've met two girls, incredible women that I call my best friends, and absolutely love them to death. And they bring out some of the best characteristics that I enjoy about myself, and they bring out those qualities within me. And man, they make me a better person. But I've made so many memories along the way, and I feel like that our team is stronger than ever. And funny enough, so looking back on our numbers, whenever I promoted to director, we were a team of 26. And even though Yeah, so then and then team of 26, and then in October 22 last year, we were a team of 49, and then I dropped to, like I said, superstar consultant. And I kind of had a hunch at that time that there were going to be maybe some more people that are going to drop off here and there. But let me tell y'all, over the last year, I have done more work within myself, especially over the last at least the last 2 years, than I ever had before. And I have boundaries in place. And I have, oh my gosh, when I look back on all the different things that I have tried and done, I have I have kind of I will say that everything that has crossed my path business wise, that I could do in the Scentsy business, I always say like I give myself at least, I think that you most people say like 6 months, but for me I normally give myself at least like a month to 2 months, and to see if I'm at least going to be able to be consistent in it and keep up with it. And then if I don't, then I realize that maybe perhaps it's either not the right time for me or it's just not for me. And it's not like my aesthetic, it's not bringing me joy. And that's okay because I'm always willing to try something once. And if it doesn't work for me, I'm going to pivot. That's one of my favorite words. I'm going to pivot and I want to make it work. I want to make it work for me, not for anyone else, but for me. So we're gonna go ahead and speed forward to present day. So present day, currently still superstar consultant, but like I said earlier, that is more than fine because we're stronger than ever. And you know what's interesting is that we are now a team of 34, but out of the 34, 23 of those are my front line. And in the midst of the last couple of months, I've had quite a lot roll up to me as well, so it's interesting, right, to see just the changes. And it has been an experience, to say the least. And I've had a lot of fun along the way. I just came back from SFR, and I remember my first SFR, even though it was online, my first SFR, still didn't at the time know what I was doing. But this past month, y'all, that was so cool to be able to bring my husband with me, bring the hubby with me, and introduce him to all of the friends that I've made over the last couple years. And the fact that all of these beautiful people are from all walks of life, different states. The fact that we see each other once a month or so on Zoom, or we talk to each other in a group chat, just blows my mind because I never ever would have thought that I would be where I'm at now. If you would have told me that where I'm at now 4 years ago, I wouldn't have believed you because 4 years ago, I didn't think I would ever have anybody that I would call a best friend, let alone two people. I didn't think that I would ever have an incredibly gifted and fun loving, silly, strong team like I do. I never would have thought that I would have found myself and been comfortable enough to be exactly who God created me to be, and for me to embrace that wholeheartedly, because this version of myself did not exist 4 years ago. And like I said, and I know I've said it enough, but I can't say it enough that it's been a journey. And I wouldn't have it any other way. And honestly, I cannot wait to see what the rest of the year has in store for us, what the rest of this year has in store for me, for Team Faith and Soul. I'm so incredibly proud of my team. I'm so blessed to have them, every single one of them, and know them, even if I just met them through this business or I knew them before. But everyone has a story. Everyone has a story. Everyone has experiences. I can definitely say that my story honestly has changed at least every year. I feel like it has changed from the very beginning till now. And I know that it is constantly going to change. Um, yeah, but yeah, I mean, for the most part, that's it. Like I'm other than that, I'm speechless as far as, looking back on everything that I've learned and experienced and done. And um my Scentsy business has given me a platform that I never ever in my wildest dreams could have ever imagined. Um it is unfathomable for me to even think about doing anything else. I'm a Scentsy lifer, y'all. I'm a Sensei lifer, and I don't ever want to do anything else. My job brings me so much joy. I'm able to be, again, my goofy, creative, silly self. I do what I love, or say I love what I'm doing. I love meeting new people, and just the fact that I get to do something like this on an open platform is just freaking incredible. But thank you so much for hanging out with me, and yeah, thanks for watching my story. And feel free to reach out to me. I'd love for you to share with me your story, but I hope you have an incredible night. And thanks again for hanging out with me.